The anger of pro-British unionists about the Brexit consequences for Northern Ireland do not stop. Now the situation is escalating. In a suburb of Belfast, almost 30 rioters throw incendiary bombs at police officers and set cars on fire. The local police chief speaks of an organized attack on the police. The growing tensions in Northern Ireland erupted in a night of chaos, according to police in a suburb of the capital Belfast. Several dozen people had carried out an organized attack on the police in Newtown Abbey, said local police chief Davy Beck, describing the riot as a chaos. The rioters had thrown 30 incendiary bombs at police officers and set vehicles on fires. According to the information, about 30 people, some of them masked, participated in the riots. A 47-year-old was arrested for the violence and remains in custody. On Friday evening, protesters in another area of Belfast, where the pro-British unionists are in charge, pelted police officers with manhole covers, bricks and incendiary devices. Almost 30 police officers were injured. British Northern Ireland Minister Brendan Lewis then called for calm. The local police also asked parents to be careful not to violate young people in particular. According to reports, 13 and 14-year-olds were also said to have been part of the riots at the weekend. In Northern Ireland, there is growing dissatisfaction with the consequences of Great Britain's exit from the EU, which took place in full on January 1st. The unionists reject the agreement between London and Brussels, according to which goods imported into Northern Ireland from Great Britain must be checked. The regulation is intended to prevent a closed border again between Northern Ireland and the EU member Ireland, as this would jeopardize the Good Friday Agreement. The deal was closed in 1998 to end the decades of violent conflict between pro-British Protestants and Catholics striving for independence from London. This week, tensions escalated with a decision not to take action against 24 members of the Irish Republican Party, Sinn Féin. Despite corona restrictions, they attended the funeral of the former influential member of the IRA, that is the underground armed organization we know from that time, Bobby Storey. The unionists had called for the resignation of Northern Ireland's Vice Prime Minister Michelle O'Neill, who, according to media reports, attended the funeral in June 2020 as one of 1,800 people. And of course, Brexit has consequences elsewhere too. For the second year in a row, Easter was a largely online affair, with socially distanced egg hunts and virtual church services. But there was only one notable difference in Britain. Domestic chocolate makers, who should be celebrating one of their busiest times of year, are fuming instead, and all of them cite the same cause: Brexit. "We've lost our entire European trade," said Anish Popat, the owner of the Chocolatier, which sells dark chocolate, salted caramel, water ganache, Easter eggs and other treats out of Bedfordshire, about 50 miles north of London. "Worse than that, we've lost our reputation because when we send pallets of chocolate to, let's say, Germany, and it disappears or we can't track it, our customers don't blame the courier, they blame us." The trade deals struck late last year with the European Union spared Britain from a variety of tariffs that would have inflated the prices of goods that travel to the mainland. It has not saved British companies from a maddening, unpredictable array of time-consuming, morale-sapping procedures and from stacks of paperwork that have turned exporting to the EU into, well, let's say a sort of black box mystery, although it was not unexpected. Goods go in and there is no telling when they will come out, or how much customs duties will that cost the recipient, or even where the goods will ultimately land. "We sent a pallet of drinking chocolate to a customer in Paris on January 4th, and it came back to our company yesterday," Mr. Popat said on April 1st. Not an April prank. "It's just embarrassing," he says. "So we decided that instead of trying to explain that we have no idea where our shipment to Europe have gone, we should just stop shipping there," he added. Complaints about long and bewildering forms and wayward merchandise have been heard from industries across the country. From automakers to shellfish producers, all of them. In November, the government predicted that the country would suffer the worst recession in 3 centuries because of the pandemic and forecast that the economy would shrink by 11.3%. At the same time, the Boris Johnson administration has minimized the ongoing migraine of post-Brexit trading with Europe, describing the matter as teething problems. To chocolate makers, the issues feel more like bites that are going to leave a mark. Chocolate is the UK's second largest food and drink export after whiskey, according to the Food and Drink Federation. Chocolate exports to all countries hit $1.1 billion last year, and Europe accounts for about 70% of those sales. In January, exports of British chocolate to Europe fell 68% compared with the same period the year before. The industry is dominated by a handful of players, including Cadbury, one of the largest candy makers in the world. But following a boom of artisanal bean-to-bar makers in the States, dozens of family-run companies cropped up around Britain, emphasizing ethically sourced ingredients and bespoke batches. They became big sellers in Europe, but have been nearly impossible to find there since January. We have customers complain to us all the time. Why can't I buy my favorite British chocolate? Said Hisham Feryani, the founder of Choco Dealer in Bonn, Germany, which supplies grocery stores and sells through its own websites. We have store owners with empty shelves. We have to explain it's not our fault. It's not the fault of the producer. It's Brexit, he said. Mr. Feryani has a list of 100 customers who have asked for alerts once British chocolate starts arriving again. One of them is Simone Schlief, a fan of the chocolate tree, an Edinburgh maker of what the company describes as visually stunning works of edible art crafted in small batches. She's especially fond of the whiskey-flavored nibs the company makes. So is my brother, she said. I would definitely have bought some for Easter, but I would have been buying them every month. Alistair Gower, the owner of the chocolate tree, is just annoyed. He has managed to successfully send exactly 1 batch of product to Europe since Brexit. And there were plenty of snaffles along the way. The shipment of about a worth of $8,000 of chocolate sat in limbo for weeks on its way to Holland. Once it finally arrived, his customer was asked to pay the equivalent of about $5,000 in duties because Mr. Gower had not filled out the import statement correctly. Gower said, "We'd been told the product would arrive in France, so we put Calais as the point of entry. It went to Rotterdam, where it sat for 6 weeks," he said. Chocolate sitting in a warehouse for 6 weeks. Through a shipping agent, he managed to get the import duty dropped. He learned a lesson about filling out forms, but that expertise won't help him much. He says it's impossible to find shippers that will deliver to Europe because there's a backlog of goods in the pipeline. At Cocoa Caravan, a chocolate maker in the Cotswolds, the status had meant that Europe has gone from 15% of the company's revenue to 0. That has caused Jacques Kopp, the owner, to disappoint old customers and put off new ones. In recent months, prospective buyers in the Netherlands, France, and Germany have expressed interest. They say, "We found you online and love everything you do in terms of being ethically sourced and vegan, but how are you going to combat the import-export problem we will have with the European Union?" said Mr. Kopp. And we can't give them a clear answer other than, yes, there will be additional costs involved. Mr. Kopp is also confronting a challenge common among small chocolate makers in Britain, importing raw ingredients from Europe. He stockpiled cocoa in 2020 from his source of choice in Amsterdam. Now that it is time to buy more, obstacles have emerged. Transportation costs have doubled, which is bad enough. But Mr. Kopp says his shipper refuses to take new orders because of worries that a shipment will somehow get blocked between Amsterdam and Britain. And Kopp says, it's to the point where I'm thinking of borrowing a Renault kind of van and just driving to the Netherlands myself. It's a 10-hour drive each way, but I'm not sure I have another choice. And that's a picture. It's not exclusive for the chocolate factories, but as I said, I will always bring you those examples from everyday life so you will realize, hopefully, that it's not just some complex discussion somewhere in the skies or in the clouds. It has effects in real life. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.